All right. So the next question reads, what is the derivative of absolute value function? And first we need to define what an absolute value function is. So the notation for it is 2 vertical bars over the independent variable. And these bars signify that the output is always going to be positive. In this case, any output here is just going to be the positive value of that input. So if we were to say x equals -1, then the output of that will be 1. Okay? So you guys can search up what the absolute value function looks like on the graph, but basically the notation here signifies that this is an absolute value function. Okay, and that any input, regardless of it being negative, will be positive on the other end. Okay, so they're asking us to find a derivative of an absolute value function. So there's another thing, that there's a way that we can reinterpret or interpret the absolute value function, and we can interpret it as such: the square root of x squared. So the x squared removes or gets rid of any negative value, but squares our value. So we square it first, and then we square root it to revert it back to its original value. So these two, this is another interpretation of the absolute value function, and we'll be using this interpretation to calculate our derivative. Okay, so let's calculate our derivative of this function here. So let's say f of x is equal to root of x squared. Okay, so f prime of x is going to be, so we're going to use our chain rule here, right? So we're going to calculate the derivative of root x squared, and then the derivative of x squared. Okay, so we've calculated the derivative. We just use the power rule here, which is going to be half and x squared to the power of -half times the derivative of x squared, which is 2x. So if you combine that all together, we get 2x divided by 2 times root of x squared. Okay, and we know that root of x squared is just the absolute value function, so we're going to write this as 2x over 2 of x. We can also cancel out these 2's, so we get x over absolute value of x. So that's how you find the derivative of the absolute value function, because we don't really know, and we don't really know how to work with the notation of the absolute value function. So we reinterpret it, or we change it to a notation that we're more familiar with, which is just root of x squared. And by doing so, we calculate the derivative, and then we sub back in our absolute value function where you're done. So the example that the junior tutor wrote was using the absolute function of x minus 2, and this is totally fine, and they came up with the same solution, which is just your function over the absolute value of the function itself. Okay, so this solution is correct. Good work. All right, let's move along.